Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Gaurav Sharma and with me is Nabanita Adhikari, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. Let's take a look at the headlines first. Prime Minister Narendra Modi reviews India's security preparedness amid Ukraine conflict, stresses on making India self-reliant in the defense sector. Indian embassy in Ukraine to be temporarily relocated to Poland. Russia says significant progress made by negotiators during talks to resolve fighting in Ukraine. China forces lockdown on 17 million people in Shenzhen city. In sports, 6 Indian boxers clinch gold medal at Asian Youth and Junior Boxing Championships in Jordan. Lakshya Sen loses to Kunlavut Wittidsan in men's singles title clash of German Open Badminton in Berlin. And in cricket, India declared their second innings at 303 for 9 on day 2 of Bengaluru Test, set a target of 447 runs before Sri Lanka.
As we start the bulletin, we appeal to our listeners to stay safe from COVID-19 by following these 4 simple steps. Get fully vaccinated, wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, focus on hand and face hygiene. And now the news in detail.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi chaired the meeting of Cabinet Committee on Security on Sunday to review India's security preparedness and the prevailing global scenario in the context of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Here's a report.
The Prime Minister was briefed on latest developments and different aspects of India's security preparedness in the border areas as well as in the maritime and air domain. The Prime Minister was also briefed on the latest developments in Ukraine, including the details of Operation Ganga to evacuate Indian nationals along with some citizens of India's neighbouring countries from Ukraine. Mr. Modi directed that all possible efforts should be made to bring back the mortal remains of Naveen Shekharappa, who died in Kharkiv. Sources said Mr. Modi took a detailed overview of global tech usage in defence sector and India's advances in the same. He also emphasized on integrating latest technology in the country's security apparatus. The Prime Minister reiterated that every effort must be made to make India self-reliant in the defence sector so that it not only strengthens our security but also enhances economic growth. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, Principal Secretary to Prime Minister Dr. P.K. Mishra, Cabinet Secretary Rajiv Gauba, Defence Secretary Dr. Ajay Kumar and Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla attended the meeting. V.C. Pramod for World News, All India Radio.
Ministry of External Affairs on Sunday said that the Indian embassy in Ukraine will be temporarily relocated in Poland in view of the rapidly deteriorating security situation in Ukraine, including attacks in the western parts of the country. External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bagchi said the situation will be reassessed in the light of further developments.
Russia has said that negotiators were making significant progress at talks to resolve fighting in Ukraine. Leonid Slutsky, a senior member of Russia's negotiating team, told the state-run television network RT that significant progress was made following several rounds of talks hosted on the border of neighbouring Belarus. According to the Russian news agencies, Slutsky said his own expectations are that this progress could develop over the next few days into a unified position held by both delegations in the documents to be signed. Negotiators from Moscow and Kyiv have held several rounds of talks since the Russian President Vladimir Putin sent in troops to the country. Turkey this week hosted a first meeting between the Russian and Ukrainian foreign ministers. A senior Ukraine advisor and presidential aide, Mikhailo Podolyak, tweeted that Russia had stopped issuing ultimatums and instead carefully listens to their positions. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Saturday that Russia had adopted a fundamentally different approach in the talks. Mr. Zelensky has said that he is open for talks with the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Israel, but only if there's a ceasefire in place. Russian President Putin had also said that there had been some positive shifts in the dialogue and that negotiations were being held amongst daily.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Sunday held talks with the Polish President Andrzej Duda and the Prime Minister of Bulgaria, Kirill Petkov, where he discussed the current situation in Ukraine, calling Russia an aggressor committing crimes against the country. The Russian Defense Ministry has said the special operation is targeting Ukrainian military infrastructure only and the civilian population is not in danger. The West, however, denies these claims by the Russians, and in response, Western nations have imposed comprehensive sanctions on Moscow.
In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on efforts to resolve the Ukraine crisis. We're joined by Bhashwati Mukherjee, a former ambassador, and Sanjay Jha, a journalist.
Today is the day 18th of the Russian invasion on Ukraine, and there seems to be no let-up in this crisis. Russian warplanes fired about 30 cruise missiles at Ukrainian military base near Polish border, bringing the war even closer to NATO's doorsteps. The attack on military base near Lviv killed at 35 as the Polish president warns Russia could use chemical weapons. Pope Francis today also issued a heartfelt plea for an end to the massacre and unacceptable armed attack in Ukraine. Speaking after his weekly prayers today, he condemned the barbarity of killing children and civilians, adding, "In the name of God, stop this massacre." Ambassador Mukherjee, when do you think this war would stop?
Well, the manner in which the war is progressing, the conflict is progressing, would indicate that President Putin is very close to his objective of getting control of major cities, which in his perspective would commence with the fall of Kiev. The reason why the attacks are taking place on the western border from President Putin's perspective is to prevent NATO from sending combat weapons across the border to Ukrainian fighters who are trying to hold their defenses against the Russian troops on the ground, because the war has reached a phase where the attacks, bombardment from the air is now followed by Russian infantry and tanks closing in from three sides on Kiev. Under those circumstances, and given the fact that historically Kiev is very important to the Russians from the point of view of the Orthodox Church. The Russian Orthodox Church commenced from Kiev. It used to be called Russia Kiev. And from that perspective, they would probably want the fall of Kiev before they could come to some kind of a peace negotiation or deal, which has been offered by the Israeli leadership. But the Israelis, like the Turks, have suggested to the Ukrainians that they should surrender to the Russian forces to prevent more bloodshed, etc., which is an offer which has not yet been accepted by the Ukrainian leadership. Under those circumstances, and if you recall the manner in which India too, way back in 71, for very different reasons, helped the Mufti Bahini to liberate what was then East Pakistan. When you're in the middle or the close of a military operation, usually the party that is conducting the military operation does not stop when victory is so close. So in my estimation, until Kiev falls, and there are reports filtering in that it could fall as early as tomorrow, it would appear to be difficult to have any negotiated end to the war until President Putin's objectives of the war are met, which is to be able to discuss the future of Ukraine and its sovereignty from a position of strength, especially since the Russian forces have also taken some casualties.
Yes, you talked about the role of the Orthodox Church. The Orthodox world's spiritual leader, Bartholomew, has called for a ceasefire in Ukraine while praising the nation's powerful resistance against the invading Russian forces. Now, we have seen people in Kyiv are scrambling to escape with bulk of Russian ground forces, which is now almost 16 miles outside the center of Ukrainian capital. Mayor of Mariupol has said that these bombardments have killed over 1,500 people and the besieged port city as shelling continues. President Zelensky of Ukraine has said almost 125,000 people have been evacuated from conflict zones through humanitarian corridors. In a video address today, he said priority was Mariupol, where almost around 500,000 people are trapped and water and food has run out. Is this becoming a major humanitarian crisis, Ambassador Mukherjee?
Let me first explain that the Ukrainians split the Orthodox Church and took it away from the Orthodox Church in Kiev, in Ukraine, is no longer under the Russian Orthodox Church from Moscow. This was one of the provocations from a Russian perspective, and therefore the call which has been given is now called the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. As far as the killing of civilians and bombardment of civilian areas is concerned, from a Russian perspective, it has been said that the weapons which the Ukrainians have and which have been supplied by NATO states on Ukraine's borders have been kept for safety in civilian areas using civilians as you could call it, like a civilian body shield. Probably for that reason, the casualties are higher. Also, the Polish authorities have today said that they cannot accept any more Ukrainian refugees. They already are completely overwhelmed by the number of refugees, more than 1 million who have crossed the western borders of Ukraine. Under those circumstances, it would seem to me to be wise for President Zelensky to sue for peace before this beautiful country gets further bombarded and destroyed. The last thing I'm sure that President Zelensky would want is for the creation of another mini Syria or Afghanistan inside Europe. And if that is to be avoided, then he should sue for peace, as has been advised by the leaders of Israel and Turkey. He should come to an immediate agreement with the Russians on stopping the war. That is the only way to stop the war, is for President Zelensky to understand the reality, which does not yet seem to be apparent, because even on the question of NATO membership, he is still doing double talk. He says that he doesn't want NATO membership because NATO does not want him. He is not saying that he accepts the Russian demand that Ukraine be neutral and become a buffer state between NATO's reach on the borders of Ukraine and Russia. He is not saying that clearly. He is saying Ukraine cannot become a NATO state because NATO has abandoned Ukraine and NATO does not want Ukraine. That is very different from what the Russians would like him to say. So I think there is still much distance to be covered between the demands of President Putin and the responses of President Zelensky. And in the meantime, as you rightly point out, the price is being paid through human suffering, civilian casualties, and bombardment of Ukraine's major cities now, which earlier had been spared.
You talked about the role of NATO and how President Zelensky is not giving a clear-cut message. The war in Ukraine is the most dangerous international conflict since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. And primarily, the Western countries are principally responsible for Ukrainian crisis. And many experts are saying that the reckless expansion of NATO has provoked Russia. So it is up to Zelensky to come out and say that, okay, I'm not going to join, or NATO to say that Ukraine would not be included. In that context, the series of talks which has held via video conferencing by Russian and Ukrainian representatives over the past days, on the basis the world leaders have been pushing both the countries for an immediate ceasefire and a diplomatic solution to the conflict in Ukraine. There seems to be no progress. Now the delegates from both sides of the peace talks have sounded positive ahead of more negotiations in the next few days. What do you think is the hitch between two sides?
Very clear that when the former USSR disintegrated and Gorbachev was told by the West that there would be no expansion of NATO up to Russia's borders, and on that condition could Russia agree to German reunification. Gorbachev agreed, but the strategic error he made was not to take this assurance from NATO in writing. Subsequently, NATO's eastward expansion and President Zelensky's zeal for NATO membership, which was never promised to him at any point in a concrete form, alarmed the Russians, who were faced with the prospect of an aggressive NATO all the way up to its borders with Crimea. So this was very, very different from NATO expansion up to Poland, which was more or less acceptable to the Russian Federation. Under those circumstances, as I said, unless President Zelensky clarifies that he agrees to the neutral status of Ukraine and that Ukraine would not ask for NATO membership, it does not seem to me to be possible for President Putin and the Russian armed forces to agree, because they have already taken a lot of casualties in this campaign And the campaign started on the basis that Zelensky refused to be neutral. So unless he says that he agrees to be neutral, how can any agreement be acceptable to the Russian side? And if there is a ceasefire right now, without that undertaking from Zelensky, then the entire military operation of Putin would be severely criticized domestically in Russia and by the Russian armed forces. So I think it is not realistic for us to talk of a ceasefire until Zelensky agrees. And right now it would appear to me that Zelensky is being manipulated by NATO, and the price that is being paid is the Ukrainian nation and the Ukrainian people. So since he's a Ukrainian and he's the head of state, he should know when to sue for peace. That is a sign of statesmanship. He should sue for peace and he should say that he agrees to Ukrainian neutrality. I don't see President Putin agreeing to any ceasefire or any peace negotiation unless Zelensky says clearly that Ukraine will be a neutral state, so that Russia's borders do not coincide with NATO's borders. That is the bottom line as far as the Russian security paradigm is concerned.
As you rightly said, the ball lies in the court of President Zelensky. Let's hope that the good sense prevail on both sides and people in the Ukraine as well as in Russia do not have to suffer more of this crisis. Thank you very much for your time, Ambassador Mukherjee.
Thank you very much.
In Iraq, a series of missiles were fired on Sunday from Iran in the direction of the U.S. consulate in Erbil. A senior U.S. official said that the missiles are numbered as many as 12. None of the missiles made hit the consulate. The missile strike came several days after Iran said it would respond to an Israeli strike near Damascus, Syria, that resulted in the deaths of 2 members of Iran's Revolutionary Guard.
Iran has decided to temporarily suspend its talks aimed at diffusing years-long tensions with Saudi Arabia. This comes a day after Saudi Arabia carried out its largest known mass execution in its modern history. The Iranian media reported the government had unilaterally paused the talks with Saudi Arabia that have been ongoing in Baghdad over the past year aimed at restoring diplomatic ties. Iraq's foreign minister earlier had said the 5th round of talks between Saudi and Iranian representatives was due to resume on Wednesday. On Saturday, Saudi Arabia executed 81 people convicted of crimes ranging from killings to belongings to militant group.
This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
China reported more than 3,100 daily local COVID-19 cases on Sunday, double the previous day, forcing a lockdown on 17 million people in the southern tech hub of Shenzhen and a semi-lockdown in the financial hub of Shanghai. Most of the new local cases came from the northeastern province of Jilin, which logged 2,156 infections. As China is scrambling to address its most severe domestic COVID-19 outbreak in nearly 2 years, soaring new cases forced the country to tweak its zero-COVID policy by allowing rapid antigen tests for public use. Sunday's surge follows 1,500 new cases on Saturday and 1,100 new cases on Friday. In the capital Beijing, authorities have urged the locals to cancel all unnecessary travel, and incoming travellers must not take part in group meals or other gatherings for the first 7 days after entering the city. The financial hub of Shanghai and the port city of Qingdao in Shandong province are also facing serious local outbreaks. Residents in both the cities have been urged to cancel all unnecessary travel, and all inbound and outbound travellers are required to present negative nucleic acid test results taken within 48 hours. According to media reports on Sunday, the city of Jilin has been partially locked down, with hundreds of neighbourhoods sealed up. Earlier, the neighbouring city of Changchun, an industrial base of 9 million people, was locked down on Friday.
India's Ayush Minister Sarbanand Sonowal has said that the country is well positioned to become global leader in yoga and traditional medicine. The minister was speaking in New Delhi after inaugurating Yoga Mahotsav 2022. He said the event is aimed to promote the 100 Days Countdown campaign towards International Day of Yoga, which is celebrated on 21st of June every year.
100 Days Countdown is an important event in observation of International Day of Yoga every year. The event will formally mark the beginning of the journey towards celebration of International Day of Yoga, a journey towards freedom from disease, stress and depression. The basic objective of this event are to give a wider promotion and publicity to various dimensions of yoga, its utility for health, well-being and world peace. Ministry of Ayush, under the aegis of Morarji Desai National Institute of Yoga, is starting a campaign, 100 Days, 100 Cities, 100 Organizations, by conducting various activities, program, yoga workshop, seminar to sensitize the people about the health benefit of yoga.
Mr. Sonowal said this year the Yoga Mahotsav is being celebrated to give a wider promotion and publicity to various dimensions of yoga and its utility. This year, the International Day of Yoga 2022 campaign will focus on the theme 100 Days, 100 Cities and 100 Organizations till 21st June this year across the globe. For the first time, to celebrate Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, it will demonstrate yoga at 75 heritage and iconic cultural sites on 21st June. Other program includes yoga programs, yoga demonstrations, workshops, seminars to be held not only in India but across the globe.
Union Minister of India Nitin Gadkari has said that automobile companies will start manufacturing flex-fuel vehicles within 6 months, addressing a global business summit. He said most vehicles in India will soon run on 100% ethanol. Flex fuel or flexible fuel is an alternative fuel with a combination of gasoline and methanol or ethanol. Government is enabling the use of various alternate fuels in an effort to shift from fossil fuels. Automobile and auto components of flex fuel engines have been included in the Production-Linked Incentive PLI scheme. In Sri Lanka, an all-party conference will be held on March 23rd to discuss the current economic situation in the South Asian country. Local media reports on Sunday said, citing the Presidential Secretariat, the country has seen the national currency, the Sri Lankan rupee, LKR, devalued significantly against all major international currencies, in addition to fuel and gas shortages, as well as daily electricity cuts.
In boxing, 6 Indian pugilists registered contrasting wins to claim the gold medal at the Asian Youth and Junior Boxing Championships at Amman in Jordan on Sunday. Vinny, the diminutive boxer from Hisar who was facing Karina Toboke of Kazakhstan in the flyweight 50 kg final, secured 5-0 verdict in her favour. In 52 kg category, Yashika registered 4-1 win against Uzbekistan's Rakhima Bekniazova. Vidhi notched up a comfortable 5-0 win against Aya Sovendia of Jordan in the 57 kg featherweight final. Defending champion Nikita Chand grabbed the yellow medal again as she dominated her bout against Uldana Tobe of Kazakhstan in 60 kg category. Shrishti Sathe won against Nursulo of Kazakhstan in 63 kg category. Rudrika blanked Kazakhstan's Shugle Nalebe 5-0 in 75 kg category. With 21 medals in junior and 18 in youth section, the Indian contingent has secured 39 medals at the prestigious Continental Tournament, where both the age groups of men and women, youth and junior, are being played together.
In cricket, India have set a victory target of 447 runs before Sri Lanka on day 2 of the second and final test match of the series at Bengaluru. The hosts declared their second innings at 303 for 9 with a lead of 446 runs. Earlier, the visitors were bundled out for 109 within half an hour of resuming their innings in the day and night test being played at the Chinnaswamy Stadium. Sri Lanka had resumed their first innings at the overnight score of 86 for 6. Today, Rishabh Pant registered the fastest 50 in Test cricket by an Indian. He scored 50 in 31 balls. With his brisk 50, Pant broke Kapil Dev's 40-year record of the fastest Test 50 by an Indian batter. Kapil Dev had scored a 30-ball half-century while batting against Pakistan in the Karachi Test in December 1982. Earlier, Jasprit Bumrah took his first 5-wicket haul on Indian soil. On the first day of the match yesterday, India were all out for 252, with Shreyas Iyer remaining the top scorer with 92 of 98 deliveries.
India's Lakshya Sen lost to Thailand's Kunlavut Viditsaran in the men's singles final of the German Open badminton tournament in Mullheim. The young badminton sensation went down to the world number 20 with it sitting 18-21, 15-21 in 58 minutes on Sunday. The 20-year-old, who notched up a stunning victory against world number 1 and reigning Olympic champion Victor Axelsen in the semi-finals, struggled to find his best in the summit clash.
And now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Let us take a look at the press reports on China. Many media houses headlined the news of the 15th round of border talks between India and China on Friday between senior military commanders. Republic writes, India-China agree to maintain stability on ground, sustain dialogue at the 15th round of talks. Agreeing to maintain dialogue via military and diplomatic channels, India and China had a detailed exchange of views promising to maintain security on ground.
Taiwan News reports that Taiwan's National Security Bureau has confirmed that a Chinese military aircraft crashed into the South China Sea earlier this month. National Security Bureau Director General Chen Mingto on March 10th confirmed that a People's Liberation Army Air Force plane had crashed in the South China Sea on March 1st. China has not acknowledged this incident.
According to ANI, hundreds of Tibetan women in exile protested against China and raised slogans for the freedom of Tibet while commemorating the 63rd anniversary of Tibetan National Women Uprising Day in the hill town of Dharamshala on Saturday.
Hindustan Times writes China has supplied half a dozen new fourth-generation fighter jets to Pakistan this week, a move seen as Beijing's assistance to Islamabad in countering India's recently acquired French-built Rafale warplanes. Times of India writes China arm twists Pakistan for endorsing human rights violation of Uyghur Muslims. According to a report in geopolitica.info, Pakistan has given a decent burial to its own Muslim identity to support Beijing in the Uyghur issue as well as in Hong Kong and Tibet.
Now let us take a look at what made the headlines in Nepal. Hindustan Times headline reads, Nepal PM thanks India for evacuating 4 Nepalese citizens from Ukraine.
According to the Kharbog, the chairman of the Maoist Centre, Pushpa Kamal Dahal Prachanda, has said that there will be no immediate alliance with the CPN-UML. Prachanda, however, said he would continue to work with other leftist forces.
Let us have some brief news from Bangladesh. 3 people were killed and several injured in a clash reportedly over a Facebook comment under Ghazipur Kapasia on Saturday night, reports Daily Star.
The Russian envoy to Bangladesh, Alexander V. Menetsky, has criticized the section of Bangladeshi media for a biased approach in their coverage of the situation in Ukraine and Russia's actions, reports Dhaka Tribune.
Let us take a look at the press reports on Afghanistan. The Dawn reports that a convoy of 40 trucks returned to Afghanistan after collecting a consignment of 2,200 tons wheat from India via the Wagah border. India had earlier announced to give 50,000 tons of wheat to Afghanistan on humanitarian grounds. And before we end, let us take a quick look at the headlines once again. Prime Minister Narendra Modi reviews India's security preparedness amid Ukraine conflict, stresses on making India self-reliant in defence sector. Indian embassy in Ukraine to be temporarily relocated to Poland. Russia says significant progress made by negotiators during talks to resolve fighting in Ukraine. China forces lockdown on 17 million people in Shenzhen city. In sports, 6 Indian boxers clinch gold medal at Asian Youth and Junior Boxing Championships in Jordan. Lakshya Sen loses to Kundavut Vititsan in men's singles title clash of German Open Badminton. And in cricket, India declare their second innings at 303 for 9 on day 2 of Bengaluru Test, set a target of 447 runs before Sri Lanka.
And now, before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from Egypt.
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.